깜빡.
If Israel and Iran were to engage in a full-scale war, the conflict would likely have wide-reaching and severe consequences not only for the two countries, but for the entire Middle East and beyond. Here's a speculative day-by-day breakdown of the first 6 months. Month 1, initial escalation. Day 1 to 7, the spark. A critical incident occurs, such as an attack on Iranian or Israeli interests, leading to a rapid escalation. Israel launches airstrikes on Iranian military installations, including nuclear facilities and missile sites. Iran retaliates by launching missiles targeting Israeli cities and military bases. Both countries mobilize their armed forces, with Israel calling up reserves and Iran putting its Revolutionary Guards on high alert. The international community calls for de-escalation, but diplomatic efforts fail. Day 8 to 14, expanding conflict. Iran intensifies its missile attacks, targeting Tel Aviv, Haifa, and critical infrastructure. Israel responds with air and drone strikes, aiming at Iranian military and nuclear sites. Hezbollah in Lebanon and Iran-backed militias in Syria and Iraq join the fight, launching attacks against Israeli targets. Civilian casualties rise as urban areas are targeted. Israel deploys the Iron Dome system extensively, but cannot intercept every missile. Major global powers like the US, Russia, and China engage diplomatically, but tensions continue to rise. Day 15 to 21, regional involvement. The conflict spreads beyond Israel and Iran. Proxy groups in Gaza, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon join in the fighting. The U.S. deploys naval assets to the Persian Gulf and Eastern Mediterranean to support Israel. Oil prices spike as Iranian proxies target shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz, disrupting global energy supplies. Iran's cyber warfare capabilities target Israeli financial and energy systems, causing blackouts and economic disruption. Days 22 to 30, humanitarian crisis. Civilian casualties in both countries increase significantly, with thousands displaced due to airstrikes. Hospitals and humanitarian organizations struggle to manage the influx of wounded people. The United Nations calls for an immediate ceasefire, but both sides refuse to back down. Month 2, entrenchment and international tensions. Day 31 to 60, stalemate and proxy wars. Israel faces increasing missile attacks from Hezbollah and Iranian-backed militias, while retaliating with airstrikes across Lebanon and Syria. Iran attempts to mobilize its allies across the Middle East, while Israel strengthens its defenses and continues to strike Iranian infrastructure. Cyber attacks intensify on both sides, crippling essential services and communications. Days 61 to 90, diplomatic maneuvers. Diplomatic efforts ramp up, with mediators like the US, Russia, and Turkey pushing for a ceasefire. Iran and Israel face pressure from their populations as casualties rise and economic damage mounts. Both countries remain on high alert, preparing for a possible ground invasion scenario. Month 3, proxy intensification and economic impact. Day 91 to 120, economic fallout. Sanctions intensify against Iran, crippling its economy further. Israel faces international protests and economic pressure as well. The conflict further disrupts global oil markets, causing a global economic shock and soaring inflation. Refugees from Syria, Lebanon, and Iran flood neighboring countries, creating a regional humanitarian crisis. Day 121 to 150, global involvement. NATO forces increase their presence in the Mediterranean to protect global shipping lanes and oil supplies. Russia supplies Iran with additional defense systems, while the U.S. continues to provide Israel with intelligence and military support. Protests erupt worldwide, with populations demanding an end to the war and humanitarian aid for affected regions. Month 4 to 6, stalemate or ceasefire. Days 151 to 180, de-escalation or escalation. Israel and Iran face mounting pressure to agree to a ceasefire as their economies and civilian populations bear the brunt of sustained conflict. A temporary ceasefire is brokered by the United Nations, but fighting continues sporadically in proxy theaters like Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. Both sides prepare for long-term military readiness with fortified defenses and increased cyber warfare capabilities. If the ceasefire holds, international forces may step in to monitor the peace, and humanitarian aid may begin to reach affected populations. However, if the ceasefire collapses, the conflict could further spiral into a larger regional war, pulling in more countries and leading to a prolonged, devastating conflict.